Hey guys, Daryl, Constantine here. We've got the World Cup starting tomorrow. This for me is just the most exciting time every 4 years. This is just an amazing thing. And the stakes are so high because it is only 4 years. And I know there's been some talk about moving it to every 2 years, but as tough as it is, I think it's special to keep it this way. And that opportunity and understanding that it is fleeting. And today, what I'm going to do is something I wanted to do for a while. It'll be my FIFA starting 11, which I think is a fun little tradition. I'll probably talk about a few things. We'll do some honorable mentions and a few tactical thoughts going into the tournament. I'll be identifying as Argentinian for the next month. That's the team that I'll be supporting. Ethnically, I'm English, and the English team is going to be wearing a rainbow armband. The U.S. men's national team, as they're calling it, they're doing a rainbow message as well. For this reason, I can't really support either of these teams for that misappropriation of the rainbow, which is actually a very important biblical symbol, and deeply resent that being used and the way that it's being represented currently. So I'll be identifying as Argentinian. I love Argentina. I love Messi, as we all do. I like it when they play Di Maria and Dybala with Messi. Paulo Dybala, really great young player, and he usually doesn't get to play with the team because they say that he's too similar to Messi, and I think that's really the textbook definition of what I would call a first world problem. I think they play great together. I think they should put them out there. I like all three of those together. Di Maria, the two times that Messi's won, he won the Olympics when he was very young and won Copa America. Both times, Di Maria had beautiful chip goal. It was the decisive winning goal in that affair. Of course, the World Cup final that they lost to Germany, he was injured, did not play in that. And I hope that he plays. He's getting older as well, like Messi. He doesn't have the stamina level, but he's an incredible player. He's one of my favorite players, really, of all time. I would have liked to put him on my starting 11, but there's just, I have to put some historical names on here. So, okay, let's see, how are we going to do this? So I'm going to start, I'll give you my formation. It's going to be a 3-4-3, or really, if we break it down, it'll be like a 3-4-1-2, because I'll have one attacker playing behind two up top. There's certain things that you'll notice at the end. I mean, there's certain players that you might expect to be on here that won't be. This is something I always like to say. There's two topics where, I'm very definitive with what I have to say on it. This is not one of those topics. This is a very subjective subject matter. There's so many differences of opinions. What I have seen is the World Cups, and I always watch the Champions League. A lot of the league play, a lot of these players that are out there, I just haven't had an opportunity to watch enough of them. So people could say that my list is totally off, and they might be right. And there's a lot of personal preference on here. There's players that I personally enjoyed watching. So this is my personal list, and I think it's a great starting 11. I think we do pretty well against other teams, but enough about that. So I will start with my goalkeeper. It's going to be Lev Yashin. This is the famous Russian goalkeeper. And of course, this was way before my time, but the level of dominance that he had, the number of clean sheets, he was like the dominant player in football for a 10-year span. And there's no goalkeeper that has a record that keeps up with that. Obviously, we've evolved, and probably techniques are much better now, but this guy's size and the way that he was able to have the clean sheets that he had for that 10-year period, I got to put him in there. And I think that, if he was playing in this era and had the sort of techniques and training and stuff that we know now, I think that he would do just fine. So he's one of the only ones that I have on here that is an older player that was before my time. The other one I'll put on actually will do that is not somebody that I really got to watch personally, but out of respect, I'm going to put Franz Beckenbauer as my right back. So I've got three backs. The tremendous De Kaiser, as they called him, the Emperor, the Kaiser. defender. Actually started his career as a striker and then moved back to attacking midfield, and then eventually ended up in a sweeper position and was always on the podium. Any tournament that he was in, they were either first, second, or third place, and won at all levels. I believe two-time Ballon d'Or winner, and I think three-time runner-up, 70s, 60s, and 70s. And he's also the only German that I have on the list. I'm always rooting against Germany, but I felt that, it was appropriate to have one German player on here. So that'll be Franz Beckenbauer. Center back, I'm going to have Paolo Maldini, the tremendous Italian defender. In my opinion, the greatest defender that I've seen. I almost wanted to put Virgil van Dijk in where I put Franz Beckenbauer because he's really incredible to watch, but he's more modern and doesn't have as much of a track record. I'm a little bit inconsistent because later I'm going to pick somebody that's very young, but for my defense, my center back is going to be Paolo Maldini. Played for Italy, was on that 90 and 94 team that lost the penalties to Brazil. 94 tournament was the first one that I was really watching as a young boy and got to go to two games because that tournament was here in the United States. And he's just a really cool player, played for an incredible amount of time, I think like a 20 plus year career, and was really just an incredible shutdown defender. And yeah, he's going to be my center back. And at left back, I've got Roberto Carlos, the Real Madrid defender, and obviously the Brazilian defender. He is, and this is why Paulo Maldini in the center as a lockdown. Roberto Carlos, very offensive defenseman, and in my mind has scored not just the greatest football goal, but the greatest sport play of all time. And it's not actually the famous free kick against France where he kicks it and it does the reverse banana off of the post. I mean, that's an incredible goal. It's actually this one where he's sprinting down the left side of the field. He's sprinting full speed and kicks it basically at the corner with his left foot, and then has that banana goal and goes in over the goalie's hand. If you can find that goal, there's nothing in the history of sports that I've ever seen that compares to that play. So I've got him in just by virtue of that alone. So now we'll go up to my midfield, and I have just seven attacking players. Okay, so all of these guys, they could be up top as the forwards. So my starting 11, because those are the players we tend to notice, right? It was harder to even just to find three defensemen for me than to. The hardest part was where to put all these seven offensive players, but I think we'll be all right. They'll figure it out because they're all great players. So at left wing, I'm going to put Roberto Baggio, and Roberto Baggio, the divine ponytail, as they called him. Had some very heartbreaking moments in his career, most notably the missed penalty in the '94 World Cup final. This is kind of this penalty shootout is such a heartbreaking thing. They were already behind at that point. People don't realize this, that if he makes that kick, Bebeto, the second striker for Brazil, he probably steps up, kicks, and wins that way. But Baggio, remembered for that miss. He was very injured during that game. His whole career, managers, Italian management, they didn't believe in him. What he did in that '94 World Cup, scoring the 5 goals in the 3 elimination games going up to the World Cup final, is one of the most legendary performances in World Cup history. And what he did, but really single-handedly bringing that team, very dramatic fashion, extra time, tying games, against Spain, I believe Nigeria, his brace against Bulgaria in the semifinals. That's my all-time favorite brace. Those are both just two beautiful goals. Had this really terrible injury that he dealt with his entire career and just a lot of heartbreaking adversity. But in my opinion, when you look at his highlight reel, I think it's the most beautiful, most impressive. His level of skill, his nimbleness, his quickness in the box, his creativity, his abilities as a playmaker. He's very similar to Lionel Messi to me. Those two guys are very, very similar. Does not have the longevity of Lionel Messi. So, I mean, if I were to rank them, I'd have to put Messi ahead of him. But in terms of at their ceiling, the wonder goal that he scored against Czechoslovakia in the 1990 World Cup, coming on as just like a young boy as Tito Scalacci's sidekick. All you watch all of his goals for Italy that he scored, and they're works of art. So okay, enough about Baggio. Baggio. Okay, left wing. So now we'll move to my two center mids. They could both play at either side. So I've got Johan Cruyff playing left center mid. He was obviously the number 10 for the Netherlands team, total football, and that was really the best side that never won a World Cup. As usual, all of my great players that I wished had won, they all heartbreakingly lost to Germany. Messi losing to Germany in 2014, Cruyff in the Netherlands losing in '74, and Puskas and Hungary. Actually, people don't realize that Hungary was like the best team in the world for a 10 years period and tragically lost to Germany in controversial fashion. So Germany seems to always be on the receiving end. Also, even the '90 World Cup where they defeated Argentina, that final really should have been Argentina versus Italy. Italy was the best team in that tournament, and that's sort of tragic. Part of the Baggio tragedy that he didn't get to play in that last game against Argentina in the semifinals. They should have won that game. They were the best team. The tournament was in Italy. It would have been perfect, and I think Germany was. Fortunate to beat England. That was a closely fought match, but that English team with Gary Lineker, who won the Golden Boot, so that was the final that I wanted. I always tell people the World Cup, I think I've watched 8 of them, and 7 times out of the 8, the team that I've rooted for in the final, not even like rooting for the whole tournament, but it just they usually lose. The one time the team I wanted to won was in 2002 when Brazil won on Ronaldo, the original Ronaldo's brace against Germany, 2-0, 8 goals. That was a great performance by him. But yeah, Johan Cruyff, great player, total football player. I like him too. Kind of looks like me. Kind of plays like me a little bit. Just obviously, not. I'm not saying that I'm Johan Cruyff, but when you like to look at yourself and say, oh yeah, I'm kind of like this guy. He kind of reminds me. I'm a goal poacher too, but he was a great goal scorer as well. Played for Barcelona along with the Netherlands. People don't actually know this, but the '78 World Cup, both times Argentina has won in recent years has been controversial. The hand of God goal in '86, obviously controversial. '78, the tournament was in Argentina, I believe, and gangsters actually like kidnapped Johan Cruyff and his family, and he didn't go to the tournament because he was intimidated away from it. And Argentina won that tournament, and they had very good. They were the best team, so they had a good chance to win. They should have won at '74. This is like the beauty and also kind of like the part that makes the World Cup so intense is you understand how fleeting these moments are because it is only every 4 years, and sometimes you're watching great players and you're realizing like this was it. Baggio, he doesn't get that World Cup. Cruyff doesn't get that World Cup. Messi not able to get that World Cup. Um, but Cruyff was a great player. He could do it all. And that team, that Dutch team, the concept was total football. And the idea was that all of the players were constantly moving around on the pitch. They could all sort of play it all. And he was the sort of conductor of that symphony. So this was why I put him in that midfield because he's accustomed to playing all over the place. So you'd do a great job putting him up top, but he would do just fine in the midfield when he's distributing the ball to the players that he's got the quality on that team. Okay, right center mid. I'm going to go with Diego Maradona, incredible, obviously player. The tournament that he had in 1986, that is the most dominant single player performance. What he did for Napoli, if the Ballon d'Or was not restricted to players from Europe, he probably would have won 3 Ballon d'Ors. But everybody knows that game, scored the 2 most famous goals of all time in the same game, that 2-1 win over England. One was by cheating, the hand of God, as he termed it, and we have a different name for it, those of us in England. And then he scores, that the most incredible World Cup goal where he, in 11 seconds, 11 touches, takes the ball 2/3 of the field and finishes it over Shilton or past Shilton in the way that he does. And then in the finals, making that decisive assist to Butcher Radga, I can never pronounce his name right, after after Germany had crawled back to make it 2-2, and everything that he did in that whole term. I believe he had 5 or 6 assists along with the 5 goals that he scored, 4 of which in the elimination round. It is the most impressive performance. I got to see his last game actually in 1994 at that World Cup as a young boy against Nigeria, and there was a quick start assist off of a free kick, and then after that game he tested positive for drugs, and it was his last international cap. So a little bit of trivia that I got to be a part of. Obviously a very controversial figure. I think that he was a negative impact on Lionel Messi. The shadow that he placed over him and some of the comments that he made, I really didn't appreciate. I think he made it tougher on Messi, but out of respect to him, and not only for Argentina, but what he did for Napoli, what he did for that team in Italy, taking them from a smaller market team and making them the head of Serie A, which at the time was the best league in the world. So he's got to go on there. Okay, right wing. This is the one guy who, like, this is kind of a personal preference for me. He's probably not of the stature. He's not of the stature of the other players on this list, but I love watching him play. And I think at right wing with his left foot, the way that his famous cut in technique, I call it the NHL 94 technique, because there's old secret in NHL 94 was that there was this unstoppable move where if you went into the crease and then cut over, it was like a little cheat in the game that it would always score. So I'm putting Arjen Robben, the Dutch winger, at my right wing position. Captain Picard, another nickname for him, played for Bayern Munich primarily. That's what he's most notably known for, and incredible player. His ability and what he did, really, the 2014 tournament, he was the best player in that tournament. Messi received the player of the tournament, and he did have a tremendous performance in that first round. He scored those 4 incredible goals, and then the decisive assist in extra time to Di Maria, very impressive. But towards the end of the tournament, he was quieted. He was not able to break through in that semifinal against the Netherlands that went to penalty kicks, and where they defeated Arjen Robben, and then wasn't able to score in the final against Germany either. Arjen Robben was the best player in that tournament. He carried the Netherlands all the way to the semifinals, and they lost to Argentina in that. And, penalty kicks could have gone either way. But he's really incredible in that tournament. In 2010 as well, and he's another guy, sort of tragic. He had a breakaway. He had a breakaway in the final in extra time, I believe, and Iker Casillas makes probably the greatest stop of all time. And I mean, Robin isn't wrong in how he strikes that ball, but just by a sliver, Casillas is able to deflect it, and Spain would go on to score. I believe it was either Xavi or Iniesta. I forget which one of the two. I always get them confused. But Spain was the best team in the world, and they did deserve to win that game. I like the Netherlands. I root for them a lot. I remember Dennis Bergkamp. I used to love him and his wonder goal against Argentina in the '98 tournament. So, I wish the Netherlands had won that game, but it was appropriate that Spain won. They were the best team in the world, not just then, but for like a 6-year period. And also, the Netherlands, their strategy in that game, they were just violently fouling them. Remember the kick in the chest? That should have been a red card. I mean, that's like one of the craziest things you see, and for that to just be a yellow card, so you can't feel bad about that, because Spain did deserve to win that game. But Arjen Robben, incredible. I love his technique. I love the way that he would cut in and then strike with that left foot. Used to love watching him when it was he and Ribery, another player, one of my favorites that I would have liked to put on here, the French winger, when they were on Bayern Munich on those two sides. Used to love watching them. They had Lewandowski, of course, up top. So that's it. That's my midfield line. Now up top, my 3 forwards. I've got a 1-2, so I've got like two pure strikers, and then behind them I've got somebody playing as a 10 spot, and that so my player playing back is going to be Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi, we've already talked about him a little bit. Just an incredible talent. Um, love. I think everybody loves watching Lionel Messi just because you see this just talented young kid, and it just you can't help but connect with that. Anybody that played and had dreams of becoming a big player, and you just see that this just that a humble, small young boy that actually had like a very tough he had a growth condition where he had stunted growth and he was taking hormones at a young age. And actually, if he wasn't taken up into Barcelona's farm system, his life might have turned out very, very differently. But you're just, watch him play over the course of his career and just the way that he plays the game, just a pure footballer. You can't help but root for him. And I think everybody, unless you're from Germany, it was very heartbreaking to see him lose in 2014. And you see the effect that it had on him. Immediately after that, he starts doing the tattoos and the beards and the weird hair and all that stuff that, now everybody is doing. He was he was very emotionally damaged by that, and there's been a lot of heartbreak in his career. But I think we hope this looks like this will be, and I believe he said this will be his last tournament. He's 35. Argentina's in a great position. They not only won Copa America, but they also won the Bellissima against Italy, the Kings of Euro. They hold that game where the two sides play and win. Winning Copa America is not really, in my opinion, a very big deal. I'm glad he finally did it, but this is not equivalent to Euro. Euro is a much more substantial tournament. Really, Copa America, I mean, Argentina or Brazil should be winning it pretty much every time. So for him finally to win, it was significant. It was good, but it's not equivalent to Euro. The way that I talked about this, there should be more spots allocated for Europe because every tournament, at least one of the giants is left out. I think last time you didn't have Netherlands or Italy. This time we don't have Italy. We don't get to see Erling Haaland. I mean, Norway isn't a great team, but we have other countries that come in from other parts of the world, and the tournament should have the 32 best teams in it. And there is the idea of it being the World Cup and having the world be represented. So I understand that we want to have all of the continents represented, but they should look at that because the tournament we want it to be the best tournament. As a result of that, the Euro tournament is really skill wise, objectively speaking, it's as challenging as the World Cup because all of the good European teams are in it. And, really from South America, there's really, even though we have some quality, Uruguay is quality, Chile is quality, really there's only two teams that we look at and say that, barring a miracle, they have a chance to win the tournament, and that's Brazil and Argentina. In Euro, you don't have them, but then you have the other two teams that, don't make it in. So we don't have we don't have Italy in this tournament. Well, Italy played in Euro and Italy won Euro. So it is almost equivalent because of that. But Messi, he's still to cement that spot as the greatest ever player. He would need to win the World Cup. They're positioned to win. They have a very good team, and they finally have a good manager. I really like Scaloni. I was very pleased when they made him their skipper a few years ago. That's been a big factor. But, there's a lot. They're one of the teams that can win. Brazil can win. France can win. England can win. And anybody can win, but teams that have like a real chance. So they are one of those teams. It doesn't mean that they will win. The chances are still, that they won't. But they're in a good position. It'll be nice to see what they do. Anyways, Lionel Messi, his ability, his just creativity in the box, and also his ability as a playmaker. And we see the way that he's fit in at PSG, which is really beautiful. He's in top form right now. All three of those guys are in great form. Neymar is in fantastic form. He might be in the best form of his career, which is going to make for a very interesting tournament. And Messi has fitted to that role, and I think it's kind of good for him because now he's a little bit older and not being the central focal point of the attack, but you see that he's able to impact scoring, assisting. So I put him in the 10 spot, and that would be really beautiful. So up top, my first striker is going to be Romario, the Brazilian striker. He's now a senator. It's a fun piece of trivia. I remember him from the 94 tournament, and he was the best. He was absolutely, that performance is for me up there with Diego Maradona for the best performance. 5 goals. If he took the penalty kicks, he would have gotten six. He would have been tied with Zelensky and Stoichkov for the Golden Boot. But he's, in my opinion, I put him actually, he's, in my opinion, the greatest player of all time. And I think he's highly underrated. We really forget about him. He also is in the 700 goal club, was always scoring, and his creativity in the box and his clinicalness, his ability to score, I think is unmatched. I look at him as somebody size wise and his touch with the ball actually very similar to Diego Maradona, but I actually put him ahead of him because I think that he was a more clinical goal scorer and he had a lengthier career, a lengthier track record. And it's a real shame that the 1998 World Cup that he suffered an injury right before that because you had young Ronaldo at the peak of his powers and Romario. That was the Roro show that they called it with Rivaldo. That team would have been like the greatest team ever. And he got injured. We didn't get to see that. We only really got to see him featured in one World Cup tournament, which was '94. But he won that. He won everything else. Won with Barcelona. So I put him up top. Now the next spot, I almost wanted to put Erling Haaland up here. Um, it's the Norwegian thing, and he really is an incredible player. I don't know if we've ever seen anybody quite as efficient as him in the box. But out of respect to the body of work, I ended up sticking with CR7, Cristiano Ronaldo, as my third striker up front, and also with Romario and Messi. We needed an aerial threat, so it was the right spot to put him here. What can we say about Mr. Champions League? Six-time Ballon d'Or winner. He's now won Euro. He's won everything with Champions League and has scored now in three leagues, three top leagues. He's done it. So he's really just absolutely incredible. And he's doing it now at the age of 37, which to me, in a sport like football, is actually kind of more incredible than even what Tom Brady's doing at age 45 in American football. Because as a quarterback, you're in a position where the game is coming through you, so it's kind of more about your durability. But kind of, what LeBron is doing at his age, what Ronaldo is doing at 37 to still be at that level, even though he hasn't necessarily been in his best form with Man U this current season. But we also hear that there's some issues going on there. So I put him up top, and that's going to complete my forward duo, and I've got Romario with his clinical precision in the box and creativity, and Ronaldo, his ability to finish, and now an aerial threat with that, and then obviously Messi just creating things and making things happen. Yeah, that's a pretty deadly duo. I'm not going to get into the Messi or Ronaldo debate. We'll leave that for another one. My goat, like I said, is Romario. That '94 tournament is very special to me, and the two featured players, the two great players, Baggio and Romario, that met in the finals. Romario was fortunate enough to leave with the win, but both of those guys to me are really special players. So they're in based on that. But Baggio has kind of some tragic arcs in his career and maybe didn't fully live up to his potential. But again, Romario's goal scoring prowess, scoring over 700 goals, winning the World Cup along with all of the other trophies. I put him up there. Yeah, I put him really, to me, restating similar skill set to Maradona, but just with more finishing, a more clinical finisher, and more consistency over the course of his career. So that's going to be my list going off of memory here. Again, I've got Lev Yashin in goal. I've got Beckenbauer, Maldini, Roberto Carlos on the back line. That's a pretty sick back line. In midfield, I've got Baggio on the left wing. I've got Cruyff, Maradona, and then Arjen Robben. That's my one that maybe doesn't belong on this list, but that's kind of my personal pick. And then up top, because he can come in from the side, NHL '94 style. Up top again, Messi, Romario, and Ronaldo. Honorable mentions, some players I wanted to include on here. Gabriel Batistuta, the great striker. Gabigol for Argentina. He was one of the best pure strikers. If I were to pick a fourth striker, I probably would have picked him. And then after him would be, the original Ronaldo Nazario. I'd probably put Batistuta slightly ahead of him, but those would be my other two guys up top. Michael Laudrup, incredible midfielder that has been overlooked. He just had pure class. If you watch his highlights, he's really impressive. A couple things tactically that I want to note that just small bit of feedback. When teams are up 1-0, usually they'll go into a defensive shell unless you're just completely outmatched, unless it's like, I don't know, South Korea versus Brazil and you get a lucky bounce in the ninth minute and you really have no business being in that game. You can camp up in that. But if you're competitive with the other team, mathematically it's better actually to just keep competing. Because yes, if you say in an offensive or even a neutral format, the odds of the other team scoring perhaps is slightly higher, but the chances of you scoring are also higher and more. That number increases as the game goes down because the other team let them become reckless, let them open up for you, and rather than you shelling up. Because usually what happens, you shell up. I don't want to say usually, but just very often eventually, if you have a 30-minute pressure scenario, they will break through. They'll get that tiebreaker. And then after that, you have a very hard time regaining your footing in the match because you're used to playing defensively and they have all of the momentum. The best example of this is what happened in Euro. England, very fortunate, they get an early goal and they camp out for the rest of the game. And that's just, not appropriate. Italy deserved to win Euro for that and also for, the penalties. And that's kind of my next one, which is this thing that the players do now where they do the dance, the run up to take the penalty kick. This is nonsense, okay? If you're any professional player, semi-professional, just an intermediate player, you have such a substantial advantage when you go up to take a penalty kick. Anybody that knows how to strike a ball should be able to convert at minimum 70% of the time, probably closer to above 80%. So in all likelihood, if you do that dance stutter step, you're actually more likely to psych yourself out. The one guy that I say is allowed to do it is Neymar. Neymar is just very effective with it, and that's kind of part of the Brazilian tradition. He's a bit of a showboater, but he's able to do it. I don't like it when other guys do it. The way I was always trained with penalties, it's kind of like Russian roulette. You just sort of step up as a man and you take your click, and whoever the click falls on, the rest of the team is indebted to him because he took the bullet for the rest of the team. But that's really the way that you do it. You just step up with purpose, and you recognize that the advantage is in your favor. So the best thing to do simply to go up with a purpose and strike at the ball. Maybe don't even look at the keeper. The dancing, the stutter steps, more likely to hurt yourself than the opponent. And that's exactly what happened with Raheem Sterling. He steps up, psychs out the keeper, and then he's screwy footed and he ends up hitting an empty net off of the post. So that is not the way to do it. Okay. My favorite penalty kicker of all time, which is another honorable mention, history tangent here as I'm trying to wrap this up. Alan Shearer. If I've got one penalty kick, Alan Shearer, the Newcastle striker, was at a time the Premier League all-time leading scorer. I'm not sure off the top of my head if he still has that record, but he was incredible. And in that game, actually, this was England. England is always so uninspiring to watch. It's always been this way. And my father is English. That's where I learned football from. So we're always kind of very cynical with that team. But that 98 squad was really the only team that showed any real character. And also, that was a continuation of the 96 team. And tragically, both teams lost on penalties. 96 Euro, they lost to Germany in a game that they outplayed them. They didn't make it to the finals. And in '98, I believe the round of 16 or the round of eight, they lost to Argentina, which was probably the game of that tournament. That was a really incredible game. That, and I guess the Argentina and Holland game where Bergkamp has the finisher at the end, that beautiful wonder goal. So in that one, they had a young Michael Owen up top and Alan Shearer, and Michael Owen was really incredible in that game. He scored a wonder goal, and he also drew a penalty. And Alan Shearer, you watch the way that he strikes that ball. He just steps up, top left corner, and just hammers it. And to his credit, the game actually ends up going to penalty. This is, by the way, this is why I'm not a big David Beckham fan. He gets a red card in the extra time of that game, and it was a really, really silly play. So I always had some distaste in my mouth towards him for that. But Alan Shearer steps up and penalty, does the exact same thing again, just top corner, hammers it. They don't win, they don't advance. Argentina continues, but that always sticks out in my head. And Alan Shearer, I believe, had a 93 or 94% conversion rate. So that technique worked pretty good for him. If I've got one guy to take one kick for me to win a World Cup, that's who I'm going to go with. The one guy I'm okay with the stutter step is Neymar. He's very effective with it, and he is a showman. That's kind of the classic Brazilian, going back to Garincha, the beautiful game, Ronaldinho, that kind of thing. So if you're a Brazilian and you're having fun, maybe that's okay. But for the rest of the players, I recommend just taking a true kick and striking the ball correctly. That's going to be it. I'm going to stop myself before I go off on another hour-long tangent about football. I could be here all day. No one would like that. Let's see. Whoever I want to win usually doesn't, so I'll just be happy to see some nice goals. And I usually say, as long as Germany doesn't win, I'm happy. And now that I've said that, I've probably jinxed it. So Germany will probably get that fifth goal. You can thank me for that. All right. It's enough fun stuff. Time to get back to the campaign. God bless America.